The Shanghai Cooperation Organization, why it is important. Greetings from the red corner. If you haven't yet heard of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, this may be the time you should, and here is why. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization is a Eurasian political, economic, and security organization. In terms of geographic scope and population, it is the world's largest regional organization, covering approximately 60% of the area of Eurasia, 40% of the world population, and more than 30% of global GDP. The organization currently has 9 full members, including China, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, India, and Pakistan. Its recent summit held in Samarkand was marked with the admission of Iran. Since the time when Russia, and then China started being more confident and systemic in securing their national interests employing the platforms and mechanisms of various international organizations, the West adopted a foreign policy concept according to which only those international structures in which the West dominates can have the right to exist. Those that West can't control have been dismantled. The rule of law is replaced by the rule of power. That is possible due to the West's financial and economic advantages. Over the past few months, it looks like the time of the United Nations is coming as well. Calls for reforming the UN Security Council, denial of visas to diplomats for the UN General Assembly sessions, etc. have become chronic. It is not hard to predict that at some point Russia, even though a member of the UN Permanent Security Council and one of the organization's founders, will lose the ability to participate in its work because it simply will run out of diplomats accredited at the United Nations. This is a fundamental violation of the UN Charter by the host nation, but it is the host nation that controls the issuance of visas to diplomats. No doubt that Russia can live outside the UN and without the UN, while the UN can hardly exist without Russia, which is one of the biggest nuclear, energy and resource power. But, as we have already said, the West has been working to dismantle the international law system that had been built in the United Nations Foundation. This is done because it is easier to deal with each individual country separately using the right of the more powerful. Russia cannot stop or prevent the process of the disintegration of the system based on the international law. The system has been already irreparably damaged and is currently paralyzed. What Russia could do and in fact did was to begin the construction of a new system which will become a set of rules, norms, and standards generally recognized as binding between the participating states. It would establish the normative guidelines and a common conceptual framework for states across a broad range of domains, including war, diplomacy, economic relations, and human rights. As you probably know, the United Nations grew out of the initial wartime coalition. The anti-Hitler allies in fact called themselves the United Nations. In the final phase of the World War II, when it became clear that the Germany-Italy-Japan axis were losing, the United Nations proclaimed that they wanted to establish an organization whose primary mission would be the prevention of future wars. It was also announced that only the countries that would declare war on the Axis countries would be able to join the new international organization. As a result, in the end of 1944 and in early 1945, large numbers of countries declared war on Germany and Japan. Today, a kind of a similar coalition is being formed around the formally non-military Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which, by the way, does not discourage military cooperation among its members. The structure that was originally created by Russia and China for the protection of their interests in Central Asia, at this time has begun expanding outside the Eurasian continent. In the event that the old United Nations is liquidated, Russia and China already have their own alternative structure with similar missions and executive powers that is completely outside the Western influence. The organization appears attractive to the international community. The line to join it is long. Moscow and Beijing today are the heavyweights who can move a candidate up or down the list. That is understandable, as the whole thing started as a Chinese-Russian project. Neither Beijing without Moscow nor Moscow without Beijing can sustain it on their own. Everyone needs law, order, and clear rules of the game. This is necessary to avoid a lot of unpleasant surprises in international relations. Today, China and Russia have a window of opportunity to create such a system well before the time when their political opponents are able to counteract with anything relatively similar. This also means that Moscow and Beijing soon will be able to establish a legal basis for the financial, economic, political, and military domination in the new world order that they have begun building. This process has already started. And that's what the West needs to be aware of. This was the view from the red corner. Thanks for listening.